And actually, weaponized is the result of state capture. And you know, the Constitution has created a lot of institutions that are independent and how the office holders will be recruited. What this government has done very cleverly is that they have captured first the recruitment process in the Constitution. And then they install a person that is pre-identified by certain organs of the state, especially the intelligence, I mean, if I may say. So they bring X, who has been identified. They take him through a sham interviews, which again, the people who are conducting the interviews have been pre-selected, and they install that person in a critical institution. So that person works at their behest. Because the system has been compromised, it is easy now to weaponize. The constitutional design of many offices was, to place independent people, who will exercise certain powers as per the Constitution. But that's what under the bridge. I mean, that ended with, the government of Kibaki. In the last 10 years, and I think the Deputy President will admit even during the first 5 years, this was very, very common. Those independent institutions, whether it's in the judiciary, whether it's in the police force, whether it is in the DPP's office, whether it is constitutional commissions, the government put people they have pre-selected in a certain manner and then put them using sham interviews. Now, those guys now are acting for or on behalf of the government when they are holding very, very powerful institutions that are supposed to be independent.
Would you say then that then the Constitution has failed in that respect?
Yes,
so it doesn't matter who.
Yes, yes. The way the Constitution was envisaged to work has not worked because the Constitution expects people to behave in a certain manner. So those people have failed to behave the way the Constitution said they should behave. So in that way, the constitutional process is broken. It's broke.
Senior Counsel, do you see it the same or you feel different?
James have a different view. I think Ahmednasir had the advantage, Senior Counsel had the advantage of serving in the first Judicial Service Commission. And I think that they appointed the first Chief Justice, Willie Mutunga, Senior Counsel, through a proper process. Public participation was part of it, and I think we got a very good Chief Justice. The second, when Ahmednasir left JSC, I took over from him as representing the Law Society, and we took part in a transparent interview and appointed Justice Maraga as Chief Justice.
It was not pre-selected.
And it was not pre-selected. So I think unless Ahmednasir Senior Counsel is referring to other commissions, I don't think the commission that are certain pre-selected or predetermined candidates. Now, as for the other commissions and as for targeting individuals, I believe DP, His Excellency William Ruto, was addressing questions touching on, I believe, the closure of Keroche and other players who perhaps have been the subject of other processes, legal or otherwise. Carey, he's mentioned Carey.
Yes, ESCC, DCI.
I think the message is clear. You need not fear if you know you're on the right. We need to use the law in an appropriate form. For Carey, when there are issues that are raised, go to court, take advantage of a very proper process within Carey, the ADR process, assess taxes if they are due, agree with Carey on payment by installments. There are processes. So I believe the Keroche question can be resolved without much ado. So that we should not just see targeting in every process. Where the ESCC comes for a person who comes for you unfairly, go to court, stop them. So I think that in as much as there may be a feeling that there may be certain violations arresting certain people for certain acts, what people must also know is that there's a recourse. You can go to court and challenge.
No, I mean, okay, Prof, I think, he's speaking from, a simplistic understanding of the law. That's the way the law is.
That's the law.
No. But the reality in Kenya is different from the way the law is.
How do you advise your clients?
And we know so many Kenyans today, so many Kenyans whose bank accounts have been closed by KRA because of a certain political persuasions they adhere to. I mean, I know people whose contracts have been cancelled because they are perceived to belong to a certain political persuasion. I mean, the law, I mean, nobody cares about the law or the consequence of the law. That's for the next government. But there are many contractors in this country that have been cancelled. There are people whose business has been completely ruined because of the political stand they have taken. And even those who go to court, how many judgments have been disobeyed? According to the Attorney General, 1.5 trillion in damages have not been paid. So what's the use of going to court even if your monies will not be paid?
So, I mean,
at least they'll be a finding, an edict from the court that there's been a violation. Insofar as the obedience of court orders is concerned, I agree that government has not been very fair in complying with court orders. That I join issues. I agree with my learned friend on that question.
Right.
But we cannot sit back and say that we'll allow government to violate rights so that people will be targeted. I think we don't just sit back that now our rights have been violated. Let us also go to court and show that there are certain things that are not done right. We can't just sit back
sometimes,
and say that,
if we read things superficially, we will not understand things. I mean, when you see Koroche, for example, being targeted, I mean, there's a lot of other dynamics. There is competition. There is all these things you hear. There is
competition from who?
Competition from other beer makers. I mean, that's what they say. I mean, you don't. I mean, if you don't pay tax or if you have a tax liability, there's a way of sorting out. But when you shut a company, when you write to all the banks in the country and say don't extend credit line to this company, I mean, KRA goes out of its way, and I agree and I can testify that there are many institutions like KRA, the police, the DPP that target certain people deliberately because they have been told to go and target. And that's a complete abuse of the process.
The question, and I'm saying this tonight even online, that for the last 10 years, Jubilee has brought this sort of unprecedented disregard of the law. And it's been everywhere, in different places. And the question is this, like, going through all this process, you're mentioning about KRA and, using court process and disobedience of court orders and that sort of thing. Do we really are going to trust these institutions, regardless of transition to a new government?
Jubilee, now that is Ahmednasir's client. He's been supporting Jubilee. Now he's supporting UDA. In ODM, we have been fighting for the rights of individuals, individual rights. So we have been on this side of the divide, on the receiving end. So I think I should be saying what the things Ahmed should be saying. As ODM.
No, I agree with him. Jubilee, the history of Jubilee has two phases. The first 5 years and the second 5 years. The first 5 years, that's the time I used to belong to Jubilee. The second 5 years, it has become ODM. So it is, let me tell you, and this I'm saying it seriously, the problems of this country happen when ODM, joined the government through informal process. And the government that came to power was dissolved in informal process. That is where Kenya went wrong. And that is because the president, in his own wisdom or powers, sort of disbanded his government and brought in, he brought in ODM, or he shared power. Actually, if you look at the last 4 years, the Honorable Prime Minister was sharing constitutional powers with the president in an informal setting. It is not provided for in the constitution, but you could see him, sometimes in the State House, sometimes participating in some small things. He was exercising, and I think I will give you an example. I think there was one time, was it petrol that was increased or something? He said that he will intervene, and the next day, the price was brought down. So he was exercising constitutional power extra-constitutionally, extra-juridically, what scholars call it, in a manner not provided for the constitution. And the Deputy Prime Minister could not exercise his powers given to him by the constitution because he was stopped from doing this. So the country, in terms of constitutional, rule of law, democracy, the damage we have suffered the last 4 years because of this informal setting, because of ODM just, coming to power. When they have lost the election, they lost the election, and they came to power. And they've been exiled in power for 4 years.